Ugh, the food is terrible again. It doesn't taste good at all when I have to eat it while looking at your gloomy face. It was a big mistake to marry such an incompetent woman. In fact, it was a mistake to be born into this family in the first place. I'm fed up with having two sick people in the house. Whenever my husband sees me, all he does is complain. I don't want his words to upset his bedridden parents. My name is Chloe, I am 34. We've been married for 5 years. We met through a mutual friend when I was 29 and my husband was 31. After graduating college, I lost my parents to illness one after another. My husband, Sam, proposed a serious relationship with marriage in mind, which made me believe he was a sincere person. Looking back, I think he was in a hurry to get married because all of his friends were getting married and he didn't want to fall behind. The topic of marriage came up within 6 months of dating, and I went to visit his family. His parents welcomed me more than I expected and showed me a lot of consideration when they learned that my parents were gone. My MIL helped me with the wedding preparations just like my own mother would have, and I was very grateful. So, I had no objections to living together with his parents after marriage. In fact, you could even say I was more than welcome. Chloe, the coffee you make is really good. Thank you. My deceased father was a great coffee lover, and I also love coffee due to his influence. I buy various beans and sometimes blend them myself. I was so into coffee that I wanted to open a cafe with my father in the future. However, after my father passed away, I somehow lost that passion. Now, my FIL truly enjoys the coffee I make. When I see how much he loves coffee and enjoys coffee I make, it reminds me of my father. Sometimes it brings tears to my eyes. On the other hand, Sam can't tell the difference between instant and brewed coffee from beans, so even when I buy beans, he only says that instant would probably taste better. I also enjoy cooking, but Sam doesn't show any interest in food and has never praised anything I've cooked. He seems to think that anything edible is the same. But my MIL enjoys cooking with me, which raises my spirits. I've always dreamed of cooking with a daughter like this. Plus, Chloe, you know a lot of recipes. You've been teaching a lot. Thank you, I enjoy cooking with you every day too. Sam had nothing to do with household chores, but my in-laws were always happy with what I did, so married life was enjoyable. However, 2 years ago, my MIL got sick. Although she didn't need to be hospitalized, she had to lie down sometimes. Chloe, I'm sorry. I'm feeling good today, so I can help a little with housework. Please take a break sometimes. I'm fine. Please don't push yourself. But that's right, Mom. Chloe is only good at housework. Sam, you shouldn't say that. Do you realize how much Chloe helps us every day? You can work free from anxiety because Chloe is here. You should show some appreciation. The wife should take care of the husband's parents. I can't be grateful for such a thing. It doesn't bother me to take care of my MIL, but it's unpleasant to be taken for granted by Sam. After my MIL became bedridden, Sam started complaining that the house was gloomy, he started coming home late, and he started working more on his days off. Then I noticed foundation on his clothes, perfume lingering on him, and other suspicious things. When I confronted him, he admitted to having an affair. He said he met her at a bar where he went for drinks with his colleagues because he didn't want to come home early and help with caregiving. I was stunned by his lack of remorse and the absurdity of his reason for cheating. I was infuriated and frustrated to think that he was doing such things while I was taking care of the house and his mother. But my FIL was furious and preached Sam, who seemed to reflect greatly at that time. He apologized and promised never to cheat again, so I didn't divorce him. But to be honest, I was more worried about leaving my frail MIL than wanting to stay with Sam as a couple. I couldn't imagine Sam taking care of his mother, and I thought it would be hard for my FIL, who was still working, to take care of her. Then my FIL retired when he turned 65. On the day my FIL retired, Sam was more interested in how much OASDI would be and how much he would give him than in appreciating his father's long years of work. It seemed that Sam was counting on his father's pension. However, his father's answer was completely contrary to Sam's expectations. "I can't give you any money from my pension." "What?" He said he would get pension just as much as he need to survive. "What? So what was the point of me putting up with everything all this time, looking after my mother and living with her?" "What are you talking about? You've hardly done anything to take care of your mother. Just living under the same roof as her is as good as taking care of her." After this, Sam's verbal abuse got worse. Apparently, the noble attitude Sam took when he was caught cheating was because he was counting on pension he would get from his father. "I should have married a richer woman. I rushed into marriage and it's been a failure." "Stop it, Sam. Chloe has been nothing but good to you." "Shut up. My mother is nothing more than a nuisance." "How dare you say such things to your own mother?" "Oh, this house is so depressing. I'm seriously unlucky to be stuck with a useless wife, a dull father, and a troublesome mother." Despite his FIL's multiple warnings, Sam refused to listen. As a result, he started to work overtime and on the weekend. I can't help but suspect that he's cheating again just like before. But then, my FIL stumbled in the garden and hit his back hard, ending up bedridden. Taking care of my in-laws was challenging, but they really cared for me and always seemed sorry, so it didn't bother me that much. However, it did bother me that Sam wouldn't help at all. I'm sure my in-laws would be happier being looked after by their own son than by me, who isn't related by blood. "Sam, can't you at least help take care of your parents?" "What do I care? There's no way I can do that." "They're your parents. Can't you at least speak kindly to them?" "I got a bum deal with a wife, and I got a bum deal with parents, too. I just can't catch a break." I can't help but feel that the real losers are the in-laws. My suspicion that Sam is having an affair doesn't go away, but I can't leave the house, especially with my in-laws bedridden. If I leave, Sam would surely neglect his parents. I don't want to remain married to such a man, but I can't bring myself to ask for a divorce, wondering what would happen to my in-laws. Then, Sam announced that he was going to Hawaii with friends for Christmas. "You're going to spend Christmas holidays in Hawaii?" "Yes. I'm not going to spend my precious holiday in this depressing house. I'm going to refresh my body and soul in the sun-soaked Hawaii." "Don't you want to spend at least Christmas taking care of your parents and have a quiet family time at home?" "Not at all. Who would want to spend their precious vacation in this house?" "Who are these friends?" "Who I travel with is none of your business." "Is it a woman?" "Shut up. What do you care if it is?" Sam brazenly denied it, just like the last time. He must have been cheating again. I wasn't shocked to find out about it this time, but I was disappointed to see Sam's attitude. He showed no remorse. I bit my lip at the realization that he doesn't consider me his wife. I work every day. I can't keep going without some sort of fun. "But Sam, you're married. Shouldn't there be some basic manners being spouses?" "There's no such thing. You're nothing more than a housekeeper to me, kept around to care for my parents." That's terrible. That's terrible. If you have a problem with it, let's get a divorce. Don't get on my case, especially since you have no other home to return to. You should just keep quiet and take care of the house. I don't want to stay married to him after being treated like this. I'm dying to say, I'm fine with a divorce. And leave. I could handle it on my own. But now that my MIL and also my FIL are bedridden, I can't bear to leave them behind. And if I take them with me, I don't know how we'll survive. Even if I decide to put them in a care facility, I'm not sure if both of them could be admitted right away. There's also the issue of cost. Can my in-laws' pensions alone cover all of that cost? Even if I were to work, I'm not sure if I could earn enough to cover it all. I have my own life too. Thinking about it all makes me feel uneasy. But after going through all this, there's no way I can continue living with my husband. You're worried about Sam, aren't you? Yes. It seems we made a mistake in the way we raised our son. I'm sorry for causing you so much pain. You don't have to worry about us. You should do as you please. That's right, Chloe. You should be free. But I can't just leave. I can't leave everything to Sam. Chloe. The words of my in-laws, who care about me more than their own health, resonate in my heart, and the thought of not leaving them only grows stronger. And while I stay silent, my husband talks about his affair right in front of me, as if I've given him permission to do so. I'm going on a date with her again today. I'll be late. Huh? Having a meal with her is definitely better than looking at your face. You do realize that I'm your wife, right? But you know I'm having an affair and you still won't leave me, so that means you've accepted it, right? It's an affair with the wife's approval. Nobody has approved anything. Staying here means you have. You're a pathetic woman, clinging to me because you can't survive otherwise. It's truly pathetic that I can't say anything back to my husband, who gleefully says such things. Tears of frustration spill from my eyes. But when my husband sees my tears, he only laughs with more pleasure. Seeing my husband like that fills me with despair. What am I doing? My in-laws keep apologizing to me for their son, but it's also painful to see them like that. Maybe it would be better if I weren't here. Maybe because I'm here, my husband leaves everything to me regarding his parents. But even if I think so, if my husband doesn't do anything, I would regret leaving for the rest of my life. There's no guarantee at all that my husband will change. Then, on the day before Christmas Eve, my husband brought up divorce. I've decided to divorce you. I prefer younger women. Huh? But I can let you stay here as a housekeeper. Which means things will continue as they are. You'll be living here for free, so consider that as your salary. With that, my husband laid out a signed divorce form in front of me. I see. Of course, I have no intention of becoming a housekeeper as he suggests. But I also don't want to remain his wife any longer. There are limits to how much one can look down on another person. I'm sure my husband knows that I can't abandon his parents. That's why he can say such things from a high horse. Knowing that makes me even more angry and frustrated. Well, take good care of them, will ya? The next morning, my husband left on a cheerful note for a trip to Hawaii. Even if I separated from my husband, I would like to stay with my in-laws. But such a convenient option isn't easy to come by. I had no choice but to let Christmas come and go, but the day without my husband was very peaceful. With no complaints thrown at me, the three of us laughed while watching TV, ate Christmas dinner, and although I knew I had to think about the future, I wished that this peaceful time could go on forever. And then, from the TV screen, I could hear the Christmas song started. Merry Christmas. I mused, when my FIL abruptly sat up from the bed. All right, let's get started, dear. Sure thing, she replied as my MIL swiftly stood up. What are you? Merry Christmas, Chloe. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. But, is your back okay? How about you? Are you feeling well? When I asked, they exchanged glances and grinned broadly. Then, I received astonishing news from my father. On December 30th, my husband Sam returned from a trip. He called me in a frantic voice. Hey, what's going on? What happened? Don't play dumb. Where are you? I can't get hold of my dad or mom. Well, your parents have been quite busy with the Christmas hustle and bustle, so they're taking a rest. Where did you take them? Did you kidnap them? Absolutely not. Your parents acted on their own accord. They were supposed to be immobile. You took them somewhere without asking. They're perfectly capable of standing and moving around on their own. What? At the moment the Christmas songs started, my in-laws stood up. Seeing my dumbfounded face, my FIL said, "It's the start of a new life," and laughed heartily. Apparently, his back pain was temporary and had long since healed. My MIL also had fully recovered over the last 6 months and was almost back to her old self. However, due to my husband's repeated verbal abuse, my FIL made a plan. My FIL told my MIL about it and she took the suggestion. Since Sam had joined a large company after graduating from college, his attitude had somehow become more arrogant. He was often out late, but they didn't worry too much since he was still single at that time. After marrying me, his parents had hoped that he would settle down. However, 2 years ago, when his mother fell ill, he didn't care for her and even cheated on me. He seemed remorseful, but his father felt something was off. As expected, as his father's retirement approached, Sam started talking about the pension. Anticipating his greed, they could tell Sam was acting virtuous just to get his hands on the pension. But when Sam found out that there was no pension he could get, he showed his true colors. This confirmed the FIL's suspicions. In reality, my FIL received much more pensions, but he told Sam otherwise because he knew Sam was after it. If Sam had been kind to his mother and me, even without the money, they were willing to give him a share of the money. It's a shame it didn't work out that way, said the FIL with a hint of sadness. When he fell and hurt his back. If you're bedridden now, you'll just be a burden. Sam had said so. That comment convinced him to stop considering Sam as his son. The parents decided to pretend to be bedridden and make preparations. He apologized for the trouble this caused me during that time. What's this for sale sign doing on our house? Why is there a sign like that hanging on our house? Isn't the meaning obvious? Cut the crap. So that house was put up for sale. We've moved out. What do you mean? I haven't heard anything. Yep, because I have no intention of living with you, I didn't feel like telling you. My FIL had bought a new house with his savings. The old house was supposed to be bought out by a real estate agent, and we were supposed to vacate by Christmas Day. But since we were not going anywhere anyway, we were told that it would be okay to wait until yesterday. So, we waited until Sam went on a trip. My FIL's little joke of moving at the sound of Christmas songs was funny, but at that moment, it felt like a new day had dawned in my life too. All that was left to pack my things, which was a piece of cake. The movers were already arranged, and everything was moved out by the 28th. Dad, did he get enough pensions? He didn't tell you because you were after it. What happened to the money from the sale of the house? I'm your son. I have a right to receive it. It's my inheritance. Your father is still alive, so it can't be inheritance, right? You know, he is so determined to use up all his money before he passes away so that he wouldn't leave anything for you, He's even more energetic now. He's still my father. He doesn't want to be your father anymore. Oh, and don't worry, I've already filed for divorce. But he bought a new house. When Dad passes away, it'll be mine. Ah, that house. My FIL was kind enough to put it in my name. Of course, there's the gift tax, but I think I can handle it with the property distribution I'm getting from you. What? This was the second time I had caught my husband cheating, and he had dumped all of his parents' caregiving on her while he was busy abusing her daily. I had been a housewife for 5 years, taking care of Sam as well. Considering all these factors, it was said that I could get a good amount of property division. My FIL had already consulted a lawyer about this. I've put your stuff in a storage unit, even though there wasn't much. I've given the key to the lawyer, so you'll be contacted by the lawyer later. Where the hell am I supposed to go now? I don't know. Figure it out yourself. That won't work. I told my girlfriend that I would be living in a house with a maid. Without a house or you, I'm going to look bad. I was astounded that he would say that to me at this point. I was reminded once again that he was a man who could only think about himself. I didn't even feel like talking anymore, so I just hung up the phone. Maybe it's true that you can't do wrong without getting caught. My ex-husband's Hawaii affair trip was spotted by his boss, who was on a family vacation at the time, and it was found out at his company. His company had very strict ethics rules, and my ex-husband was demoted, and his salary was significantly cut. As soon as my lawyer sent a message to the woman he was seeing, she disappeared. After that, unfortunately, I received numerous reconciliation requests from my ex-husband. There's no chance that I agree to that. He is now living on the edge, struggling to pay his credit card bills, which he had been lavishing on his mistress. He pleaded with the lawyer to get back together with me, crying about his current situation, but the lawyer refused right there. My FIL had recorded my ex-husband's verbal abuse, and the lawyer, who had heard it, was quite angry, saying it was unacceptable as a human being, so it was no surprise. My FIL had bought an old house with good air. I'm currently planning to turn it into an old-fashioned cafe. My FIL had said that he bought it with that intention. Every day, I exchange ideas with my FIL and his wife, trying to figure out what will work the best. I don't know if it will work out, but I'm going to give it my all. Seeing the happy faces of my in-laws every day makes me happier than anything else. I want to continue to live together, enjoying good coffee and getting along well. Margaret just passed away. What? The dumbfounded face of my husband Timothy, as he stood at the front door looking at me, has etched into my mind. He seemed unable to comprehend the sudden reality that our daughter, Margaret, had died. What are you talking about? Stop it with the cruel jokes. It's not funny. Timothy mocked me, drenched in the rain, as if he had any right to speak. It's not a lie. What have you done? I'll take care of the funeral arrangements, so I'll be away from home for a while. Goodbye. Seeing me tremble all over, Timothy finally seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation. Is that true? He recoiled. However, his reaction felt detached, as if it was someone else's problem, which only intensified my discomfort. My anger flared up within me as I turned back. I will never forgive him. I'll make sure he pays for putting me through this. My name is Rosie. I'm 38 and work at an advertising agency. My family consists of Timothy and our 8-year-old daughter, Margaret. We aren't wealthy, but we lead a comfortable life. That's partly because my job at the advertising agency pays well, and compared to my peers, I earn a significant salary. We never struggle for pocket money, and we've been able to save for Margaret's tuition. Even considering the living expenses and the mortgage, we managed to save some money each month. Timothy is aware of my high salary, which seemed to bruise his pride. A year ago, he started his own business as a freelancer in web development. He claimed to switch to freelancing due to the stagnant salary as an employee, but it's questionable how much one can earn freelancing. I opposed when he decided to quit his job. I thought it safer to continue working for a company and receive a full pension than to risk freelancing. But Timothy insisted on freelancing, and eventually, we followed his wish. Timothy, now a freelancer, works from home every day. Perhaps the dissatisfaction with his salary was just a facade, and he actually disliked dealing with annoying work relationships. Either way, our new lifestyle, with Timothy at home and me going to the office, was unfamiliar. Initially, Margaret was happy to have her father at home when she returned from school, but lately, she seemed discontent. Though she didn't say it, she probably felt constantly being watched. Despite being only 8, Margaret appeared more mature than her classmates. Thus, we were living without major issues, but I hadn't realized the emotional distance between us began when Timothy started working from home. When Timothy shifted to working from home, I asked him if he could help with some household chores. Could you help with the chores like cleaning and laundry? Just what you can manage. I'll still handle the cooking. Why should I have to do the housework? Because you have more free time and are at home more. Of course, when you're tired, it's okay. Just what you can manage. Free time? Freelancing isn't leisurely. It's actually quite tough. I can't be expected to do all that as well. What a response. Timothy outright rejected my modest proposal without giving it any thought. Indeed, I understand that freelancing can be very busy and mentally taxing. That's why I was against the switch in the first place. But household responsibilities should belong to no one person, especially since we both worked and I had been handling all the chores. I thought it fair to share some of the burden. But I'm working too. I wish we could share these tasks equally. You've been managing the housework on your own so far, right? Don't start complaining now. Timothy, convinced he was in the right, wouldn't listen. So, the household chores remained my responsibility. Not that I thought freelancing meant less busyness, but when I got home late, Timothy was invariably lounging in front of the TV or staring intently at his mobile phone. Is dinner ready yet? He would ask arrogantly, as if entitled, which was infuriating. Moreover, now that he was home more, perhaps he became more aware of the dirt and clutter around the house. Daily, he would complain. Clean more thoroughly. Began to give instructions. If it bothers you that much, why don't you clean it up? I'm only human, I can't catch everything. Are you talking back to me? Clean up your own mess. It's our family's home, so it's not like I'm the only one making a mess. Yet, Timothy, with his inexplicable arguments, left me utterly astounded. Margaret was quietly listening to our conversation from afar. Dad is always looking at his mobile phone. I want to go out as a family on my days off, but Dad says it's impossible because he's busy with his phone. One Sunday morning, while I was making breakfast, Margaret came and told me this. Last night, she had asked Timothy to go out and play, but he refused while looking at his mobile phone. Is that so? But it's true. He's always on his phone. Even before Mommy gets home from work. Sometimes he's on the phone with someone. On the phone? Yeah. He talks like they're really close. I always hear a woman's voice. That means... From Margaret's description, it didn't seem like Timothy was talking to a business contact. It could be a coworker he's working with, but considering he's freelancing, who could he be talking to so often? It might be part of his work that I'm not aware of, like delegating some tasks to someone else, but the mention of a woman's voice snagged at me. Could he be having an affair? It's not out of the question. He only started working from home a few months ago and should have more free time than when he was working at the office. Trying not to let Margaret see how shaken I was, I hurriedly finished making breakfast. Months passed, and it had been a year since Timothy became a freelancer. He still wouldn't help with any household chores. On the contrary, he began spending all his weekends away from home. There are no weekends off for a freelancer. I've got work. He would leave the house, often dressed more stylishly than usual, with accessories and cologne he didn't usually wear. Despite my suspicions, I felt resigned, knowing that making accusations of infidelity without proof would only lead to him talking his way out of it. Moreover, even if Timothy was cheating, I wasn't sure what I should do. Intellectually, I knew leaving him would be best, but considering Margaret, I couldn't easily make that decision. Was I prepared to take her father away from her? It was a question that tormented me daily. However, our life was about to reach a turning point. On Monday morning, as I was getting ready to leave for work, Margaret didn't wake up as usual, and I was worried she would be late for school. "Margaret, it's morning. You need to wake up or you'll be late for school." When I went to wake her up, she seemed unwell. Rushing over, I placed my hand on her forehead. "You're hot. Margaret, you have a fever." "Yeah." I brought a thermometer, and it read 102 degrees. "What should I do? I have an important meeting today and can't take off work." As I panicked, Timothy came in. "What's going on?" "Timothy, Margaret has a high fever. I can't skip work today. Maybe we should call a home health aide." "A home health aide? No need for that, I'll take care of her." "What? Just let her rest quietly, right? I can make some oatmeal. It'll be fine." I was deeply surprised to hear Timothy offer to take care of Margaret, who had a high fever. He had never involved himself in household or childcare duties before. It was hard to believe, but with the situation being urgent, I decided to trust Timothy and ask for his help. "Then, please take care of her. There's fruit in the fridge if she feels like eating." "Got it." Relieved to hear Timothy's reassuring response, I hurriedly got ready and rushed out of the house. I was worried about Margaret, but getting to work on time was my top priority. I caught the train, and by the time I reached my station, the sky had darkened and it had started to rain. Fortunately, I had a foldable umbrella, so I made it to the office without getting wet. The meeting started as scheduled in the afternoon, but I couldn't stop thinking about Margaret during it. At that moment, the building was shaking from the fierce rain and strong wind outside, causing a stir around me. Did the news mention a hurricane approaching? I had been too busy lately to pay much attention to the weather forecast, but I remember the news about the hurricane being quite persistent. Throughout the meeting, it seemed like everyone, including myself, was concerned about the hurricane's impact, frequently looking outside. By 7 p.m., when I finally finished work and headed home, the rain from the hurricane had intensified, and several trains had stopped. The train I was supposed to take was delayed, and the platform was crowded with people. Worried about Margaret, who had a high fever, I couldn't wait on the platform any longer. I rushed through the ticket gate to look for a cab. Many people were waiting for a cab, so I had to wait quite a while, but after 30 minutes, I managed to get one. After a 30-minute drive asking the driver to hurry, I got out of the cab in front of my house and was speechless at the scene before me. "Margaret!" Margaret was lying collapsed in front of the entrance. I immediately picked up Margaret, who was soaking wet. "Margaret, are you okay? What happened?" "Dad has." Seeing my face seemed to reassure her, and after saying Dad has, Margaret lost her strength and went limp. She still had a high fever, and despite being wet from the rain, her body was hot. I turned back to the cab I had just arrived in and knocked on the driver's window. "Excuse me. I'm getting back in. Please take us to the hospital." Seeing the urgency in my expression and the unwell Margaret in my arms, the driver, "Yes," opened the door for us. I hurried back into the cab. We headed to the nearest hospital as fast as possible. "Margaret! Margaret!" During the ride, I kept calling out to Margaret, fearing the worst. Although I was eager to know why Margaret had collapsed in front of the door, saving her life was the most important thing at that moment. Despite the hurricane, the cab struggled but eventually made it to the hospital. "Be careful on your way back. It's still rough out there." "Yes, thank you." The kind driver dropped us off, and I rushed Margaret into the hospital. Despite the crowded hospital, the receptionist quickly realized the emergency and expedited our visit to the doctor. 30 minutes later, the doctor attended to Margaret, explaining she wasn't fully conscious due to a high fever but should be fine once the fever subsides, as there were no external injuries. However, considering she had been outside in the rain with a high fever for hours, Margaret was immediately admitted. "Margaret, I'm sorry. Get well soon." "Rosie." I'll take good care of her, so you should rest for today. Thank you. After spending 5 hours at the hospital watching Margaret's sleeping face in pain, a nurse advised me to go home. Though I wanted to stay by Margaret's side, I was physically and emotionally exhausted from work and the day's events. I decided to leave her in the nurse's care and head home. I was certain Timothy was to blame for Margaret's condition. Her last words before losing consciousness, "Dad has," were proof enough. It was unimaginable for Margaret to go outside on her own, especially during a hurricane. The more I thought about it, the less I could understand or forgive Timothy's actions. On my way home, I pondered what to say to Timothy. If he learned Margaret was safe, he might continue his irresponsible behavior. I couldn't let that happen. Timothy needed to deeply reflect on his actions. Resolved, I headed home. Arriving home in the rain, I found Timothy nonchalantly using his mobile phone. Noticing my return, he looked up and stared at me. "How's Margaret?" "She was sleeping in the entrance, right? She said she wanted to play outside. I told her not to, but she wouldn't listen." Hearing Timothy speak so casually infuriated me. "Margaret went outside by herself, you say?" Timothy was the one who threw her out. I clenched my fist tightly and answered, "Margaret just passed away." "What?" The dumbfounded face of Timothy, standing at the front door looking at me, was sealed into my memory. He seemed unable to comprehend the sudden reality that Margaret had died. "What are you talking about? Stop with the cruel jokes. That's not funny." Timothy mocked me, drenched in the rain, as if he had any right to speak. "It's not a lie. What have you done?" "I'll handle the funeral arrangements, so I'll be away from home for a while. Goodbye." Seeing me tremble all over, Timothy finally seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation. "Is that true?" He recoiled. However, his reaction felt detached, as if it was someone else's problem, which only intensified my discomfort. My anger flared up within me as I turned back. I will never forgive him. I'll make sure he pays for putting me through this. I stormed out of the house and headed straight to a hotel. I managed to find an available hotel and decided to live there for a while. The expense was painful, but that was the least of my concerns at the moment. I wanted revenge on Timothy. If he showed any remorse or changed after hearing about Margaret's death, I might consider my actions. But seeing no calls or messages from Timothy that day made it clear he didn't care about Margaret's fate. This only fueled my anger, and I started planning a way to seriously teach Timothy a lesson. The next morning, I went straight to the hospital after waking up. I had received a call that Margaret had regained consciousness. "Margaret! Are you okay?" "Mommy. Yeah, I'm fine now. The fever's gone down." "That's great." I hugged Margaret and stroked her head. Margaret giggled, tickled. Immersed in the joy of Margaret's return, I eventually asked her about the truth. "Margaret, what happened yesterday?" "Dad kicked me out." "I thought so." He said, "You're in the way, get out," as a woman came in and they started chatting happily. "A woman? What did she look like?" "I didn't see her well, but she was young. She had bright red nails and wore thin shoes." I couldn't believe this. Timothy was indeed having an affair. On a day when his daughter had a high fever, he let his mistress Sandra into the house and even kicked out his daughter. Unbelievable. I couldn't understand how he could do something so terrible. "That happened, huh? I'm sorry, Margaret. You must have been scared." "But I was happy because you saved me, Mommy." "Margaret." It was unforgivable for him to put Margaret through this and think he could be happy with Sandra. I felt a surge of anger welling up inside me. "By the way, Dad said he's inviting that woman over again next Sunday." "Next Sunday? That's the day I'm supposed to go on a company trip." He was planning to enjoy a pleasant day with Sandra while I was away. Disgusted but now resolute. "Thank you. That's good to know." I stroked Margaret's back, swearing to myself that I would get back at Timothy. I decided to take Margaret home with me next Sunday. I informed my company that I couldn't participate in the trip due to a family matter. Margaret had been discharged from the hospital soon after and was staying with me at the hotel. Returning home after a long time, the entrance felt like it belonged to someone else's house. "We're home." We're home. As Margaret and I entered normally, sure enough, there were unfamiliar high heels in the entrance. Just as Margaret had said. Imagining Timothy and Sandra enjoying themselves in the back room filled me with disgust. Timothy wasn't in the living room, so we headed to the bedroom. I worried the scene might be too much for Margaret, but the room was quiet. After a moment, we heard Timothy's voice from the bedroom. It worked out well. With Margaret gone, it's easier to break up. How could you say that about your daughter? But yes, I guess I'm lucky. Hearing them talk about Margaret's death as convenient and lucky made me feel dizzy. It was clear now. Timothy had not reflected at all. Then it was just time to confront the situation head-on. Excuse us, may we come in? Upon opening the door and seeing Margaret and me, the two inside were visibly shocked. Why are you here today? You said you were going on a company trip. And why is Margaret here? Wait a minute. I thought your daughter was dead. It's no wonder they panicked, seeing Margaret, whom they believed to be dead. I explained calmly. The news of her death was a lie. I'm sorry. I wanted to see your reaction. To see if you'd show any remorse. But instead, you seemed relieved Margaret was gone. That's not normal behavior. A lie? So you were just lying? Give me back the worry I felt for her. Timothy's claim of worry was laughable. I sighed deeply. Don't joke with me. You're the one who kicked Margaret out of the house, aren't you? That's not true. Margaret left on her own. I was kicked out by Dad. He said I was in the way because he wanted to be with that woman. Margaret immediately spoke the truth, turning Timothy pale. Timothy, as a father, or even as a human being, what you did is despicable. She could have died from her condition. Was being with that woman so important to you? I pointed at Sandra, who was standing beside Timothy, speechless at our confrontation. Calling her a mistress is a disgrace. She's someone from work. Work? But you quit your job to freelance. Damn. Timothy's attempt to lie on the spot only ended up proving that Sandra was indeed his mistress. Well, I didn't need to ask you to know. Here, evidence of the affair. Private investigators are amazing. They gathered all this evidence in just a week. I thrust a large envelope under Timothy's nose. After hearing about Timothy's affair from Margaret, I had started an investigation into his infidelity. I never expected to gather evidence so quickly. Timothy was a poor liar. He hesitantly opened the envelope and dropped a bundle of photos proving his affair onto the floor. How could you? Is trapping someone like this and exposing them fun for you? Even now, Timothy tried to paint me as the villain, despite his own actions being to blame. I pulled out the divorce papers from my bag and presented them to Timothy. Unfair? Who's really being unfair here? There's no value in staying with someone who can't even distinguish right from wrong. Let's get a divorce. Timothy stared at the divorce papers, wide-eyed. If he truly wanted to be with Sandra, he should quietly accept the divorce. You'll be paying compensation and child support, of course. And I'll be seeking damages from you too. Be prepared. I looked at Sandra when I said, and you. Why should I pay? I didn't know about any of this. What do you mean? Why should I pay? By having an affair, you've helped break a family. You're responsible. I don't have money. Sandra was distressed, running her fingers through her hair. Margaret and I watched her with detached interest. Though Margaret was still young, she seemed to grasp the concept of compensation, holding my hand tightly. If you don't have it, find it. You're in love, right? You should be able to overcome such a hurdle together. Don't ever show your faces to me or Margaret again. You can have this house, but you're taking over the mortgage payments. Timothy attempted to protest. Wait a second. But I ignored him, taking Margaret's hand. Losing a father might be tough for her, but I had no regrets. I couldn't risk putting Margaret in danger again. Margaret, let's do our best together from now on. Yeah. Margaret smiled happily, and I felt reassured. Margaret and I went back to my parents' house to stay for a while. My parents were furious upon learning that Timothy had cheated and put Margaret through such an ordeal, almost ready to confront him physically. I managed to calm them down, averting further trouble. You're always welcome to stay at home. Thank you. Both my mother and father were delighted to welcome us, and Margaret was happy to be with her beloved grandparents. It was a relief to see that we wouldn't have any problems for a while. As for Timothy, I had a lawyer demand compensation and child support, successfully securing a lump sum payment from him. I also made sure to extract compensation from Sandra. It's hard to imagine Timothy had tens of thousands in savings, so he probably had to borrow the money. On top of that, he still had to pay off the remaining mortgage, so no doubt, Timothy is in a dire financial situation without any leeway. A colleague at my company, who went to high school with Timothy, updated me on his recent situation. Apparently, he ended up breaking up with Sandra. Timothy had confidently told Sandra he had money, but when the truth came out that things were different, they broke up. Given that Timothy's income had halved compared to his days as a salaried worker, it was inevitable. Now, he's hustling with freelance work and various part-time jobs. Having lost me, Margaret, and Sandra, Timothy is left to live a modest life, repaying his debts. It's all his responsibility. He should struggle and regret. Mommy, today at school, we made presents for Granny and Gramps for the elderly day. Is that so? Let's give them the presents later then. Yeah. Seeing Margaret thrive even without Timothy made me feel happy. Moving forward, I'll continue at our own pace, together with Margaret.